let us begin. So, welcome you all to another Nerdy Reviews episode. I'm your host, Zaku, and today we're going to be reviewing Zeta Gundam, or Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam. To tell you the truth, I was really excited to get into this series. This is one of the few that is one of those huge top echelons in the Gundam franchise, and it has a very good staying memory with me, too. It's one of those top contenders too, where it always fights with the original Gundam for the highest score. Let me digress a little bit here for you guys and talk a little bit more about what Zeta Gundam is. So, just to give you a brief synopsis of the story here. So, as we are traveling along the Universal Century timeline, Zeta Gundam now occurs in Universal Century 0087. We follow our young protagonist here, who's smooching for. But we're following a young man by the name of Camille Biran, who gets involved in an ever-growing conflict between the oppressive Titans and the rebelling AU, which is the Anti-Earth Union group. That's just the basis of it, like the super short version of it. What comes out of this is a harrowing and very troubling conflict most Gundam fans know as the Grips War or the Grips Conflict. Very fun stuff. So that in itself is a nutshell of what the story is about. Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam is actually the direct sequel to the original Mobile Suit Gundam. Even though this is probably my 10th review, I think. Maybe I'm miscounting here, but 10th review into the Gundam franchise. Again, we're starting at the very beginning of the Universal Century, and now we're progressing all the way now from actually as early as 0068 to now 0087 now. We progress about 20 years almost. But in actual release time frame, this is the second Gundam series that was ever released in the world. So after the success of the reruns from the original Gundam, and of course the movie compilation trilogy being released in 1982, 3 years later, Sunrise greenlit the creation of Zeta Gundam, and if I'm not mistaken here, it was released as early as 1985. So it's kind of weird because the original Gundam was in 1979. So for the longest time, I used to think that Zeta Gundam was made in 1987. For some odd reason, I thought it was 1987, but no, it was actually 1985. So 2 years prior to that time frame. Kind of interesting though. But what's even more so interesting is a lot of the other little factoids I want to provide here, or at least my purviews on this series. So first thing I want to talk about is kind of like what I've touched on a lot of the other series is the animation here. The animation on Zeta Gundam is actually not terribly that bad. I mean, like what you're seeing right here is, I believe this is actually more of a shot from the movies, but this is, if you imagine just slightly a little bit greenier, a little bit more flush rather than contrasty or more solid. That's how Zeta Gundam. It's very similar. It's oddly enough very similar to the original Gundam in character designs and the look, but the animation's a lot more smoother, a lot more detailing, more linear, more inked. If that makes more sense, compared how it was originally in the original Gundam, where the original Gundam kind of has this more of a pastel-y look. The Zeta Gundam has more of a contrasty look, a little bit more harder, more defined features for characters and suits. That being said, it's kind of funny because it's still dated animation. Anybody who watches this series go like, man, this looks older than the 80s. I'm like, no, this is 80s animation, or what it was back at that time frame. I would almost akin this to how the original Gundam is, the Gundam itself, right? And then Zeta Gundam actually is the animation more like the upgrade of it. It's like slightly better, not by a whole lot, but just better. It's like the Mark II, which, if you know series-wise, the Mark II is the upgrade version of the original Gundam, which is featured featured throughout the entire Zeta Gundam series, but featured prominently in the earlier portions of the series. I also want to talk about another fun fact about Zeta Gundam. It starts the tradition of upgrading or getting the upgraded suit midway through the series. Some people would argue that, like, hey, the original Mobile Suit Gundam did do that, And only diehard fans would really catch this on or really realize that, but it wasn't midway through. It was like maybe like the last 10 episodes or so, where the Gundam does get an upgrade, which is the magnetic coating for its joints, which is actually used prominently with a lot of the transforming suits in Zeta Gundam, actually. But that was like pretty much it. You also could argue that maybe earlier on, technically the upgrade was like the G armor in the series, if we're counting the series only and not the movies. But we don't really see like a true upgrade to a Gundam. And that's what we get in Zeta Gundam. A little bit of a spoilers here, but it's funny that the titular Zeta Gundam is not seen in the entire series, not until about, not quite the midway through. It's a 50 episode series. It appears in episode 20, I believe. Let me double check. Episode 21, A Sign of Zeta. That's when it first time appears. So that's kind of an interesting one, because usually like a lot of mech animes, a lot of older mech animes, the main characters would just get a mech and either get like, some upgrade components to it or whatnot, but it's the same thing throughout the entire series. There's some can argue that it's not like that kind of tradition with some other ones, but Gundam, I feel like, but from what it seems like, it is the one that started that tradition of, hey, this is what the main character starts off with at the beginning of the series, and then midway through or more or less, they would get the main suit, the titular suit, and move on from there. So that's kind of like what happened right here. Again, spoilers, we have Camille utilizing the Gundam Mark II throughout the majority of the first 21 episodes. Zeta is name dropped a few times throughout it, because Camille's the one that designs it, so we have a name drop of Zeta Gundam. Kind of gonna get an idea of it, but kind of trying to like get us excited for it, but we don't really see it until episode 21. And that's when we actually get the actual titular suit, and that's where Camille fully transitions from the Mark II to the Zeta Gundam, and goes from there. So we're going to start seeing this kind of happen throughout the entire series. It's funny, and let me try and point out to you guys too, a lot of Gundam series will follow this line of tradition of upgrading. If we're following the timeline that we are in, like earlier on with 8th MS Team, we had them starting off with the ground Gundams, and then Shiro is the one that gets he gets the upgrade since he's the main character, and he gets upgraded to the EZ-8 Gundam. And then we can talk about, Gundam 0083. Actually, the Gundam got upgraded initially once, and then he upgrades to a newer suit, but we have, Ko in the Unit 1, gets it destroyed, gets it upgraded to like the full Vernian model, and then gets that one wrecked too, and then gets upgraded to Unit 3. So you see what I mean with that progression of upgrades. So Zeta Gundam is the one that starts it off in the franchise. In addition to that one too, one thing I want to highlight too is that the series has a ton of mobile suits. They bring in a lot of new designs. I'm going to be talking about that in a little bit. I'm going to try not to talk too much about the designs. But Zeta Gundam differs where how the original Gundam wasn't too sure about what it wants to do, and it kind of felt very much like a Mecha of the Week kind of a episode, like a serialized thing. Zeta Gundam took that away. In fact, we got the whole Mecha of the Week taken away. We got the whole Villain of the Week taken away, or like Villain of the Day, Mecha of the Day taken away. We get introduced to a bunch of new characters. We get introduced to a bunch of new suits, and it's throughout the series. Yes, they make highlights like, oh my gosh, is that a new model? Oh no, that's a new enemy mobile suit. Oh, that's a new enemy mobile armor. Yeah, like that happens. But that's not the focus. It's not like, oh my god, this is what we're going to have to deal with in this entire episode. No, it appears, it attacks, or we're gonna have a lot more that shows more of these suits that become more prominent throughout the entire series. So I think that's another change that Zeta Gundam did from the original Gundam that really, really highlights it. No longer is this silliness of that kind of fight. It makes it more of a story based rather than like, hey, we're trying to sell toys, we're trying to sell models, let's make it a Mecha of the Week, that kind of thing. No. We're getting an actual real deal here. That reminds me, I want to show you guys something. Now, I talk about the animation looking good, and I like the animation and stuff like that. And for the most part, animation is fantastic, wonderful, delightful. But, just like any animation, there can be errors or mistakes. And I want to show you guys something. I've never seen this still anywhere, and when I watched it, I went, what? Did they actually do this? Did they actually release this in Zeta Gundam? Whoever drew this still right here. By the way, I feel like it's cell animation. You can kind of tell like the cells sliding, and you can see like the dust particles or whatnot moving. But I don't know how this is gonna come up. Let me try and see if I can catch it for you guys. There you go. So right there is a screen cap. I forgot what episode it was, but it was with I apologize, my hands are really shaky. I'm trying to stabilize it. There's Quattro Bagina. And then to our right here, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to make sure, or left, it looks like left actually, is Hayato. Yay, Hayato from the original Gundam series. Oh no, I have a short timer on my phone. And his eyes. Look at his eyes. I mean, my God. Hayato, what's up with your eyes, man? He has like these super derped eyes, and I don't know what plagued them to even do this in the entire like series. They could have fixed that. They could have mopped that up. I guess like he started off on one eye and is like, oops, he's supposed to look in the other direction. All right, we'll just finish up the other eye and just throw it in there. You sure about that? Yeah, so that was the one thing I just wanted to poke at when it came to this series animation, just a little bit. Like I mentioned before too, I had watched this series only when it has been released in the United States. So like this one, I've watched since the DVD releases, and I can't believe I've watched it 6 times, and not once. I mean, I watched episodes in the past. Like, majority of the time I've watched Zeta, it's always been dubbed, and it's the same dub I've watched consistently, and the dub is very okay. And I'm right now hearing probably voices go like, Zaku, why didn't you watch the sub then? You watched this 5 other times. Why did you watch this in sub? And I'm like, because I'm lazy and I wanted to watch it in dub. And this is how I knew it to be. And this is how I'm familiar with Zeta. So I kind of do it to myself. I need to watch a series in its original language, though, in its format. Because the dub, very meh dub. I mean, some of the voices for the characters fit very well. I think a lot of the female characters, their voices did very well. It's a lot of the cast for the male characters. Like I'm super familiar with Brad Swaley. I think that's his name, who voices for Amuro for majority of the Gundam series, and him not reprising the role or them reaching out. I don't know which company dubbed it this time around. I think it's a Canadian company. I'm not sure, but didn't reach out to him to voice for Amuro was a shame, in my opinion. Same thing with Quattro. Char. It's not really much of a spoilers, folks. If you watch the original Gundam, I mean, like, look at that. Look at that scar. And don't tell me that doesn't look like Char. That does not look like Char. But, and I forgot the voice actor's name. I hadn't looked it up before this, but he has voiced majority of the times Char Asimbal's voice. And not to hear his voice as Char or Quattro really disappointed me. Same thing with a lot of the other cast members, because they bring back a lot of characters from the original Gundam series, although most of them are like cameos / they have super small, like super side roles, which I'll talk about in a moment. I'm very glad about, but I would like to hear the original voice actors or actresses. We don't get that. But I feel like a lot of the voice acting is very okay for the most part. Not terribly great, not terribly bad. I feel like they've kind of got better voice actors. A lot of it sometimes feels too cardboardy, like they're reading off of a script. Sometimes there's not enough emotion into it. That's how I feel. And yes, everyone's going to say, well, that's what you get when you listen to Japanese instead of dubs. And I'm like, yeah, but, you know, sometimes the roles can be switched around as pertained to previous Gundam series, especially the ones that were made in the 90s and dubbed during the Toonami time frame. I digress, though, but yes, I'm going to say that the dubbing for Zeta Gundam, it's okay. It's okay. Not the greatest in the world, not the worst by any means, but it's okay. Another thing I want to talk about Zeta Gundam is the music. Wow. I've already talked about this before with Gundam 0083, where that's one of the contenders for highest contenders for best music in the overall franchise. Zeta Gundam was another one that was on that huge pinnacle. It's kind of funny, I talk about music, and music, it's not really my thing, but music is very important, but sounds very important when it comes to shows and movies. And by all means, the music in Zeta Gundam, the overall I am talking about, is phenomenal. Majority of the music in Zeta Gundam is instrumental type music. You get I don't even know what to call the song, but I call it like "Riders in the Sky" of the Sky. Basically, the last episode, it's Zeta Gundam's theme song, or like a lot of the fighting music, or the intrigue or espionage type music. Uh, we get a lot of these like instrumental, very heavy, dramatized music, and it's just amazing. I love it. Um, Even more so, and I'll talk about that too, is that when characters die, like major characters, like, and I'll get to that. I keep saying I get it, but when major characters die, you even get a specific music for when characters die. It's like this very tragic sounding music, and that's a keynote of, yeah, that character's dead. They ain't coming back. They are done. And it's not like you visually have to see it. Sometimes like they off kilter kind of kill them, but they play that song and it goes like, yeah, there is no coming back to it. It's almost like Game of Thrones, where like, you know, like if you see someone not only just killed, but like, you know, smashed completely into the ground and scraped right off, that's how you know someone's dead in Game of Thrones for the most part. Yeah, you can say the same thing with Zeta Gundam. You just got to hear that song. Once you hear that song being played for that character, oh yeah, no, they're dead. They're not coming back. There is some weird plot armor with some of these characters where like it's like if anyone else got shot in this way, they would have died, and they lived, and yes, because it's a part of the plot and all that jazz. But when you hear that music play, guaranteed they are done. And it's an interesting. I love the music, but throughout the entire series, phenomenal music though. Superb. Really plays well to what's going on, what you're watching, be it the story or the action. It is great. I love it. As for the openings and closings, the closing is not bad. The opening, of course, I can only watch the one that wasn't licensed because the original licensed song, they couldn't get that one. I think it was like not Lovers of the Pulse of the Sky. I can't remember what it was, but the original opening, you can find that on YouTube and other channels too. It's not that bad. It's a pretty decent song. It really fits the tone of Zeta Gundam itself. But I didn't mind the remake of it, or like the newer one of it. Some people are like, oh man, it's lame. But I'm like, I like it because it plays more to the instrumental, and it feels more like it belongs to the series than the original opening, actually. So, yeah, Zeta Gundam, super high, top tier. I would say it even beats out Gundam 0083. Super huge, top contender for best music in the entire Gundam franchise. It's funny, I mentioned about Gundam 0083 about the music, and Gundam 0083's music plays throughout the entire series, and it plays at critical moments, but not throughout or within good reason. Like, I feel like there's times where they could play this certain song or what and make it more intense or whatnot. Zeta Gundam keys it perfectly throughout the entire series, like when they play some of this amazing music. So I give Zeta Gundam, like, if you're gonna ask me right now, like, hey Zaku, where do these two sit between like the musical spectrum? Like, which one has better music? Zeta Gundam by far is in the lead versus 0083, which is behind it, but not gonna be competing necessarily with it. Another thing I love about this series. So, as it being a direct sequel to the original Gundam, there's a lot of things that the series does fix up. In this case here, Zeta Gundam fixes a lot of issues that the original Gundam had here, in my opinion. The original Gundam didn't really have a true direction of... It was trying to find its footing throughout the beginning episodes, and then later on, like, becoming like more of a mecha of the week, mecha of the day, villain of the day kind of thing. And then last few episodes cramming in all this new type stuff where it was very not even quite hinted throughout the series unless you watch the movies. So Zeta Gundam took all of that, like those mistakes, right, and fixed it. Also, like, dealing with, like, we had a nice cast of characters, but we were focusing on only like certain characters and not the grander scheme of things. So a lot of these important characters felt like side characters, and we only focus on certain characters throughout the entire series. And action was is there, but it jumps around from here and there, and it's, it's, while evenly paced, I felt at times some episodes didn't focus on too much action or not, and the other ones do. Again, Zeta takes all the issues the original Gundam has and improves on it. Right from beginning to end of Zeta Gundam, you have a very cohesive, fluid story. It's a solid plot that doesn't deviate from what it was trying to tell you. It knows what it wants to be from the beginning to the end. It really gets that solid pacing throughout. As we travel along this series, we have a huge cast of characters. I would almost say double the amount of what we had from the original Gundam. Like, yes, what we're looking right here in this little screenshot I have is the crew between the crew of the Argama in the background and the Radish, which Captain Henkin, pilot, or like not pilots, but commands. But we got a bunch of other characters too that we're not seeing here. So we got a lot of the Titans cast too, which plays a huge role into what we're following throughout the storyline. So you got characters like Jared, Mauer, Shirako, Sarah, even the lesser ones like Jamitov, Basque, and Jamaicon, for an example, too. So like, you got a lot of these characters. You mean like the side ones like Ben Wooder or Burian, Ruzamia. You got a ton of them. We are focusing on so many so many characters, and it's amazing how we give a lot of characters what I feel is an appropriate amount of screen time. A lot of times when you even focus, like, these are our main, this is what I would consider like our main cast, right? We still focus a lot of time also on the Titan characters, so we get a lot more of an idea of who they are, what they represent, or who they are as a character, or their own character arcs. They get character arcs, which is surprisingly enough. I'm like, the previous series, the only character that had a character arc was Char, and that wasn't saying a whole lot. In Zeta Gundam, even the villains have their own character arcs, which is amazing. So I feel like we have this huge, vastly larger cast than the original Gundam, and they are all given what I feel is equivalent or good screen time. Yes, Camille is the main protagonist here, but we do follow all these other characters as well. No one gets really left alone or sidelined. They are part of the ensemble cast of this series, which is great. That being said, too, with all the focus on the story and the characters too, how can I not talk about the mecha action? And the mecha action is thorough. Like, dang, they did a really good job squeezing in all the action alongside with the story and alongside all this plot and stuff like that, cramming all the action. There isn't really an episode where it doesn't have action. There is always action in every single episode. It's always entertaining, and the mecha fights are great. A lot of different types of movements, actions. We get to see the full spectrum of what a suit could practically do, or go more so. There are some irritating things I see within the fights themselves. Like, a lot of times, pilots like to jump out of their cockpits, which drive me nuts at times. Like, why are you doing this in the middle of combat? Why are you doing that? But it does accentuate the exciting things about the series, because the one big thing I want to talk about when it comes to Zeta Gundam is it's one of the more darker Gundam series. Where the original Gundam kind of hints at some dark things, and again, Zeta Gundam is no unfamiliar with the territories of the original Gundam. It treads alongside with the same themes that Gundam brings along, although we're not so much so focused on a war. This is more of a conflict. Almost Star Wars-esque if you really think about it, because if you think about it in this perspective, right, I'm going to generalize it. Titans are like the Empire, an oppressive government regime trying to oppress the people. And in this case, Titans are oppressing the space noids. And we have the Aeug, who are like the rebels, rebelling against them. We have this small group of freedom fighters against an oppressive government. Not the same as the original Gundam, because that's actually a like almost like a country, akin to, like, the U.S. trying to get away from Britain, almost. Not almost. I would say the same. But here we have literally freedom fighters against a oppressive government. So it's like almost like Star Wars if you really think about Empire versus Rebels versus the Empire. But what I really want to talk about is that this series is dark. I mean dark. So fun fact for you guys too, if you don't already know, Yoshiyuki. I'm trying to say his name correctly now. Yoshiyuki Tomino is very infamous for what he does in his series. He tends to be a very depressive guy from what I read about. And at the time when he was penning Zeta Gundam, he was going through one of his depressive routes. And I do have to say, he's much better when he's depressed. No offense to him. I know it's terrible and whatnot, but man, it's a motivator. Because he writes some really impressive things when he's depressed. And that is Zeta Gundam. Zeta Gundam is incredibly dark. There's a lot of themes that make you go like, wow, that's pretty messed up. From not only just losing your mom, but having to kill your dad, and dealing with all this other things, losing your lovers, and losing best friends, those sort of things. When I say this in the terms of that Zeta Gundam is what I feel like gave Tomino his very infamous title of Kill 'Em All Tomino. Anybody in the Gundam fandom knows about that titling, or if anyone's familiar with Tomino's work, he's got the infamous title of Kill 'Em All Tomino. I think it really came around about with Aiden and Gunbiner or Gundiner. I can't remember what it's called, but Zeta Gundam is another one. Um, I hope you like this cast of characters right here, and I hope you like a lot of the other cast of characters too, because this, when I had said that the original Gundam was kind of like Game of Thrones, where it kind of threw you out there. No, Zeta Gundam, and what makes it very interesting is that you don't know when these characters are gonna die, and it really throws you a hard left ball, super hard and super fast, crazy. Like you think that certain characters are gonna live? Oh no, they get iced. They get iced, and you get to hear that music like I talked about earlier, and you know they're gone. These could be characters that have been around since the beginning, obviously the beginning, or they might show up midway through and they continue onward for a good while. But this series is infamous for killing off their characters. Kill 'Em All Tomino really gets his name from this series, in my opinion. So I hope you have like your favorites in this little lineup here, cause yeah, that's all I got to say. Funny enough though, and I want to kind of like backtrack a little bit about characters. Of all the characters in this series, though, I might want to even do this in the Gundam franchise as well. There's only a handful of characters I can think of at the moment. Maybe I'll find more as I keep going throughout the entire franchise. There's characters I absolutely hate. I have to like say that with the most emphasis on that one. Now I know like with this series, we're gonna deal with like a lot of melodramatics, and I will get to that too. But talk about characters that we hate, and there just could be a variety of reasons. For me, usually these characters that I hate in the Gundam series are not because they're really bad people or anything like that. It's the kind of characters that get themselves into trouble or cause the most amount of trouble for no good reason whatsoever. And it's like the most stupidest thing ever. And sometimes these characters get really stupid plot armor shield. And I feel like they should have been iced ages ago for their stupidity. Stupidity. Because, you know, other characters that do something similar to that one just they are hamburger in space, okay? That's what they become. These characters don't. In my opinion, out of all the characters, some people say that Camille is like super whiny, and they akin him to like Shinji from Evangelion, which I call shenanigans, because Camille might be whiny and stuff like that, but that's the very beginning of the series, and that quickly cuts that out, because you know the power for Bright Slap changes everything, you know. Changes for Amuro, changes for Camille, changes for Judo. So The Bright Slap has power. Also changes for a bunch of other characters too. But the Bright Slap, do not mess with the Bright Slap. It will change you. But yes, some people hate Camille. Some people don't mind him as much, or some people actually like Camille. But if I'm going to talk about a character I really hate, because I do get annoyed by whiny characters, but he has a really good character, not really good, but a good amount of character development. You want to talk about a whiny character, or someone you can absolutely hate? I am sorry, but I absolutely hate Kots. I hate him with a bloody passion. I hate him so much. Long story short, not giving too many spoilers, he does way too many stupid things that would get anybody killed on the battlefield. He gets way too many characters into trouble. Although he bails them out at times, it's not because he bailed them out and he saved them. It's because he caused the problem himself. So that's not really fixing a wrong here, okay? That's not like, oh, I saved you, so you owe me. No, you caused this mess. You saved me, redempt that mess, but still, you caused this mess. God, I hate you so much. Ugh. Yeah, I just had to get that out. I really hate Kots. Other than that, so I do want to take a little bit of detour about all these good things I've been talking about Zeta Gundam so far, but, one of the things I didn't like, and it was a little bit too much, and it's going to be prominent through a lot of the Gundam series, too, going forward, is the melodrama. There seems to be a little too much melodrama amongst, like, the younger cast characters. You can see that with some of the other characters, too. There's some level of melodrama, and at times it becomes unreasonable or too much, but it makes sense in the context of what they're trying to do with the plot and trying to drive things through. It is hit and miss. For me right now, it's a little bit of a smidgen of a miss, but it doesn't really derail the entire series for me. Not like in previous other series when I look at my entire Blu-ray stack right here. I'm like, not a whole lot deviates from that, in my opinion at least, how I have viewed it. But overall, yeah, it can get a little bit much with the melodrama. Other than that, I do want to say, Zeta Gundam, like I was talking about, it has a very solid, straight-through plot line with action in the characters and the developments and stuff like that. But the last few episodes, wow. I don't want to spoil anything, but wow, the last few episodes, dang, that's a home run hit if there ever was a home run hit. It is just a phenomenal, orchestrated mess. I'm not saying like a bad mess. I'm talking about like a good mess, as in like the fighting, the conflict, the crescendo of the plot. Yeah, that all of that comes to a head, and it's majestic. It's beautiful. Beautiful in the most tragic way possible, but yeah. All I have to say is it makes me feel like it's like almost like Mass Effect 2 levels, like with like kind of like a suicide mission or whatnot. It's like, all right, it's like if you think your character that you like throughout the entire series has survived this far, let's see who else is gonna remain at this point. Because man, Tomino does not let up. I mean, he spreads out his kills throughout the entire series, and they hit. But those last few episodes. Oh man, it's like putting everybody and shoving them into a grinder, and let's see who makes it out alive. I'm not even kidding about that part. That's where Tomino gets his Kill 'Em All nickname. And if you've never watched this series, I'd like to challenge you to like put down a chip for a character beyond what you think is the main character too. But challenge yourself. Which other character besides the main character do you think would survive the series? And I'm not really spoiling anything here, but who do you think would survive? That makes it so much more interesting. But yeah, those last few episodes are wow. I think it's kind of funny. I also make the comparison to Star Wars, because to me, where Mobile Suit Gundam originally was dark and all that, it does end off in a happier tone. It's like almost like A New Hope, right? Because it ends up like, oh, at the end of the 1 year war, Xeon Federation signed a peace treaty. Yay! We are no longer in war in 0080. The way that Zeta Gundam ends is what I like to akin it to is Empire Strikes Back. I kind of like my bleak, somber endings. It's more like a melancholy almost, right? It's not happy, but it's not sad. But the end of Zeta Gundam leaves you kind of breathless about what just happened, and it ends in such a way that you feel like there's a level of like despair, but there is also a level of hope. And that's how I feel like with, The Empire Strikes Back. I'm going to spoil that one. If you've never seen The Empire Strikes Back, shame on you. But, like how at the end of the movie where Luke gets his hand chopped off and finds out Vader is his dad. And then he loses his best friend, Han, to Boba Fett the Bounty Hunter. And so now he gets saved by his friends, and they're looking off into the distance. Luke is getting repaired and all that. And they're just like looking off like, okay, well, we have another fight on our hands that's coming up in the future. We need to do more. And, even with all these losses and these tragic things that have happened, there is that glimmer of hope, right? That's what Zeta Gundam kind of does. And I really appreciate that with the ending, because Zeta Gundam just no holds bar at that ending. And I was like, I really want to talk and spoil more, but I'm like, I would rather you guys get the enjoyment of watching, like building up and watching to the final few episodes to really get that like thrill, because it's great. Loved it. Okay, so that's pretty much what I want to say. Like for most part of the series, I got nothing really bad to say about it. But what I want to talk about next, kind of what I've done throughout my reviews here, is I want to just talk about like some of the off-kilter things. So one of the off-kilter things I want to talk about is like favorite suits. So again, every Gundam series in the entire Gundam franchise brings in a new mobile suit or series of mobile suits. And like I mentioned earlier too, Zeta Gundam is no different in that. Zeta Gundam actually brings a whole slew of mobile suits. Again, we are now almost a decade away from the 1 year war. We are now introduced to a bunch of brand new mobile suits. We do see some old ones from the past, not a whole lot. And we get some redesigns or something that comes akin to what we see in the past, like the Hyzak right here. We get something akin to like a Zaku 2 from the 1 year war. But I just want to point out some of my favorite suits in this entire series. I do want to say like the suits overall, some of them can get really kind of weird and funky. I think a lot of the Titan suits can reach those levels of weirdness. We don't see a whole lot of Access suits. And not too much of a spoiler, but we're going to see this trend of really funky and weird suits when we get to ZZ, which I'm not excited for. But when it came to Zeta, I think they did a really good job of like kind of meshing it out with the suits. I didn't really care too much for the Ayug suits. The only really ones that you see prominent for the most part are the Nemos, which are okay design. I don't really care too much for the Nemos. They look like aquatic GMs. I don't care for them at all. But I'm not talking about things I didn't really care too much for. I want to talk about the suits I actually like, what they brought in. So first and foremost, I actually like the Hyzaks. Again, they look like Zaku 2s, and your boy Zaku loves Zakus, right? So I cannot not talk about the Hyzak. Granted, it is a Titan suit, and Titans are absolute scum. I'm sorry if you like Titans. If you like Titans, I got nothing positive to say or nice to say, so I'm not going to say anything at all. They know that saying, you got nothing nice to say at all, then don't say it. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to say anything. But what I would say, though, is that because they are Federation funded, they get some pretty nice suits. And I do like the Hyzak designs. I think there's a Hyzak command, right? Let me see if I can just find that one real fast. Oh yeah, the Hyzak Custom. Hyzak Custom. I actually really like this like long shield on the shoulder versus how it has the traditional Zaku shield almost. It's got this really nice cool one with the double spikes shoulder padded. I really like that Hyzak Custom, and then the Hyzak design itself. Really dig the Mara side design too. This double shield is pretty cool alongside with the elongated spikes. I'm surprised I never see any like Marasai tackle and using the spikes on the shoulder pad or anything like that. The helmet, for some odd reason, even though it's like huge, it's kind of cool. And it almost reminds me of Shredder from Ninja Turtles. So I like the design, I like the look of it, it's pretty cool. And I know a lot of people are gonna go like, "You like this suit?" And I'm like, I do for very different reasons, but the Methis, I actually kind of like this suit, not for its main outside design, but when it transforms into its flight mode or mobile armor mode. The cycle is a mobile armor. I don't treat these as mobile armors. I think it's just a transformed state or flight mode or whatnot. But I really like this flight mode. Like its transformation style looks really, really cool. And then when it comes out of it and looks into its suit, it's not terribly that bad. But I like the design of it. I also really enjoyed the Hammurabi suit. It to me it's like this cheeky, like super like easy transformative suit. It makes me think of like a Hydra almost or a dragon. It looks like a stingray too. What a lot of people see, but I kind of see this like dragon design almost. Minus those fins, which make it look like a stingray. But I love the Hammurabi. It looks really, really cool, especially with the Freedom Rifle. I forgot to actually pull this one up too. The Gabathy. Where is it? Gabathy, where are you? Gabathy. I actually like the Gabathy too. This one's a really, really neat design. It's kind of cool with the transformative state, but I love it in its mobile suit state. It's really, really cool. That's one thing I really liked about Zeta Gundam is it starts trying to bite off a little bit of, I feel like, the Transformers stuff or whatnot, and so it has a lot of these transformative mobile suits, and I really dig transforming mobile suits, going from the suit form to the mobile armor slash flight mode, so that way it can travel faster, and then switching back into the suit mode for combat. So I think it's really, really cool. But if I had to say, like, out of all of them that were like my favorites of like basic suit designs, I'm like, I really love the Ashmere for transformation. I do not know why. Don't ask me. Let me see if I can get it. But I just love its transformed state. It looks pretty chill. It looks like a hamburger. It's like a flying UFO, which is what it's designed to be after, whatnot. But it's like a flying hamburger. I was like, this thing looks so funny when it flies around. I actually like it. It looks cool. It's actually a really big suit. It's honking huge, and it looks like kind of like a Rick Dom almost, with the eyes, or like a Dom unit. It looks like with the whole head unit basically. I like this design. So these of those suits, those are like suits I really did enjoy. But super high up there. Like these are suits I like. They're not my absolute favorite, but these are suits I enjoy. Another set of suits I did enjoy. I really enjoy Paptimus's final suit, the O. It's this huge hulking suit, and it's really, really actually kind of cool looking, cool designed. It doesn't look practical because it looks heavy and it wouldn't do much, but it actually does a whole lot. So I'm like, it's a really cool mobile suit. I like its overall design and utility. And I'm going to throw it in there. I cannot say anything without talking about the Hayaku Shiki. This thing is, like you see it earlier on in the series throughout. It's a really cool suit. Really basic in what it can do, but it doesn't look too much like a GM, which bores me. It's got all these like neat little designs and the wing binders. The head looks even cooler than a GM or the Nemos. So I'm like, yeah, it's a really cool design. But of course, I can't talk about suits without mentioning my most favorite suit out of the entire series. And definitely my favorite suit in Zeta Gundam. What do you know? It's the Zeta Gundam. Yeah, I actually Zeta Gundam, after watching it, is one of my top tier favorite suits too. It might not be practical by any means if you're trying to do like a suit comparison, like, oh, this suit's better than that or whatnot. I just love the Zeta Gundam for its overall design and the mechanics for it too. So like when it transforms into the Wave Rider mode and then transforms out, I just love that transformation. It actually has a unique transformation sound effect too. Its weaponry that it has, from the beam rifle to the hyper mega launcher, or hyper beam launcher, right? Yeah, hyper mega launcher, which is this dude right here. It's huge. It's huge and hulking. He can actually fly with that too, and then wield his beam rifle within the shield itself. So I'm like, it's a really cool design suit. Impressed that Camille is the one that did this, and apparently he combined designs from several suits, especially like the Rick Diaz. So, if I remember right, he said it was between the Mark II and the Rick Diaz. But then it has like kind of like wing binders very akin to the Hayaku Shiki, and Methus is actually a prototype to prototype the Wave Rider mode, or transformation to the Wave Rider mode. So, yeah, Zeta Gundam was awesome. It's kind of funny too, because how good of a suit it is too. I'm not too sure whether or not it was because, like, like it was a fan favorite that people really enjoyed this series, and people really did enjoy this series. That's what kind of spurred it on. But I don't know if this suit was so big enough that it caused it to go on to the future, because like later on, when we get to Char's Counterattack, for an example, we're gonna see the Regaze. Where is the Regaze? Regaze right here. Actually, I'm sorry, not Raziel, but the Regaze, which is basically the Char's Counterattack version, the upgraded version of the Zeta Gundam, and I believe this is a mass produced. It's pre-mass produced, so some level of mass production here too. And then we get another one within the Unicorn Gundam series. So it spawns a family of suits. And I can't tell whether or not it's like, because the designers, mech designers, really like that suit and they want to bring it in and it's a fan favorite, or quite literally they were just thinking like, hey, this would be a nice suit to utilize and make it modern, like more accessible or more mass produced. So that's what I have to say about when it comes to suits, though. Overall, my favorite is the Zeta Gundam in the Zeta Gundam series, but I love a lot of the suit designs, even the kooky ones too. I really love them all. They're really cool looking, really nice. But those are some of the suits I really did enjoy. So I'm going to jump into my next segment here, which is if I am new to Gundam, should I start with this series first? I'm going to say, in the most direct way possible, is yes. Start with Zeta Gundam first if you want to. In my opinion, Zeta Gundam is the superior version, or quite literally the upgraded version of the original Gundam, with its own self-contained conflict and story. When I say this, is basically you don't need to watch previous series to get and understand this. Sure, we do have some returning characters from the white base, such as like Amuro, Bright, Kai, or Hayato, and we even get Char's, who becomes a main stray cast member in the series. But it's not pertinent to know who they were from the previous series. It's more like a fan appreciation. Like, hey, yeah, guess what? Char's back in this series. Dude, Char's in this series? That's going to be awesome. If you're new, he's like, okay, so this is Lieutenant Quattro. But, I mean, it's not even a question, like, is this Char? It's pretty much it. But as a newcomer, like, you're like, oh, this is Char, and they hint you so much so. But you find out who he is, it doesn't matter. But you don't need to know who these characters were to begin with. You don't need to know about the 1 Year War that led to this necessarily. Because, yes, 1 Year War kind of is a catalyst here. You don't need to watch previous series like Gundam 0083 to enjoy watching Zeta Gundam. In fact, Zeta Gundam came out way before 0083. You should be able to jump into this series without any problems or any issues. I'm sorry. So the series does a fantastic job of keeping the story and action balanced while giving plenty of time to our huge cast of characters. So unlike the original series where we didn't have a whole lot of like screen time with certain characters, you're gonna feel like you have equal amount of time or screen time with all these characters. You're gonna get familiar with them quick and fast, and then a lot of them, you're gonna feel terrible when they go. That's what I gotta say. You're gonna definitely get a enjoyable thrill watching this series. From the action to the story and the characters meshed in with the music, the thrilling plot line, and intrigue that is brought in with the Grips conflict, the Grips war. You're not gonna be disappointed. Easily another one of those series that you can just jump into the Gundam franchise and just consume and enjoy it. You don't need to watch previous series to understand what's going on. While it will be beneficial for you to watch it, it is not necessary at all. This series is self-contained for the most part and is an awesome jumping on point. Especially if you really like darker animes, I think you're going to enjoy Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam. Overall, Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam is a masterpiece in its own right. For being a direct sequel to the original series, It greatly improves on a lot of the issues that this original series had and expands so much more on all those key issues as a cohesive series. It's a full series that devotes its time and energy to divide evenly amongst the story and plot, the action, and the huge cast of characters. Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam gives Gundam fans what they've been asking for and gives newcomers a thrilling and engaging mecha series to watch. Zeta Gundam is easily a masterpiece of the entire Gundam franchise and is something, if you are ever wanting to watch Gundam, don't miss out on it. It is, in fact, the best Gundam series, and I have not jumped into my other ones, and I've watched all of them in the past too. I can easily say this confidently, though. Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam is the masterclass, the masterpiece of the Gundam franchise. Don't miss out on it. Check it out. You won't regret it. It is an awesome ride. Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam gets a 5 out of 5. I know a lot of people were going like, man, Zaku, where are you going to sit with Zeta Gundam here? And I'm like, I've already mentioned this in the past, too, when it came to the original Gundam, when I was reviewing that, too. Like, it's always ahead between the original Zeta Gundam, or like, the original Gundam or the Zeta Gundam series. And I fluctuate between time frames of, like, where I am, like, if a series is 5 out of 5. Here's where I didn't talk about earlier, too, though, is that Zeta Gundam, every single time I had watched it, had been consistently at 5 out of 5 with me. It has sometimes faltered to a 4 a couple of times, but it's been consistently at a 5 out of 5. The original Mobile Suit Gundam kept fluctuating between 4 and a 5. Of the many times, and I watched the original Mobile Suit Gundam actually more than I watched Zeta, but it flipped between 4 and 5 so many times. But Zeta, I can confidently say, like, 4 out of the 6 times I've watched it, including this is my 6th time watching it, but 4 of those 6 times has been consistently 5 out of 5. The other 2 times I watched it, like the first time I watched the full series, I gave it out 4 out of 5. I rewatched it, fell in love with it again after like picking up all the nuances and all the other things from other Gundam series I could pick apart. Like oh yeah, this series referenced Zeta Gundam, or this was used in Zeta Gundam. This was explained from Zeta Gundam into this series, or how it leads up to this. Like, I had more appreciation for it. And then other times, like, you know, the melodrama I keep talking about, after rewatching it one other time, and the melodrama, like, just didn't sit with me the one time I watched it years later, and I'm like, the melodrama was like, I don't like this at all. It just got to me, and it grit on my nerves. But again, it's more of a time thing for me, and like, consistently though, Zeta Gundam has been the perfect Gundam series. I really enjoy it, and I cannot highly recommend this series any more than I can. I hope this review kind of helps you out and go like, well, if I was thinking about getting into the Gundam series, I want to get into, like, dude, seriously, check it out. Watch Zeta Gundam. If you're going to get into the Gundam series, this is a great series to get into, in my opinion. Fixes everything the original Gundam did and makes it so much better. It is not just the Mark II of the series. It is quite literally the Zeta Gundam series. It's Zeta. With that said, though, guys, this does conclude my nerdy review here of Mobile Suit Zeta Gundam. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me on my Twitch account here. If you're watching it on Twitch, if you are catching this on YouTube, make sure to follow me and on YouTube. Especially if you go into the video here, make sure to pound that like button and subscribe to my channel, please. Also, in addition to that as well, I do have a Twitch account. Twitter account. On my Twitter account, it's whenever I go live and I post my live streams. So if you're not having the subscription or following for Twitch, at least on Twitter, you can find this information out too. Also see some random stuff that I post from time to time as well. But yeah, please, again, share, like, follow, subscribe. Do all that fun stuff on Twitch, YouTube, and on Twitter. I do want to thank you guys for watching, and until the next time, I will see you all on the next live stream /video. Take care.